You're watching FanTeam Daily, a podcast by WhoScored.com. Hello and welcome to FanTeam Daily, the fantasy football show that could help you win real money with your football knowledge. On FanTeam Daily, we'll be looking at the record-breaking Euro 2020 fantasy football tournament, which has a minimum guaranteed prize pool of £1 million and a guaranteed first place prize of £200,000. I'm joined again by my two guests. First up, Ben Dinnery, FanTeam ambassador and founder of Premier Injuries. How are you, Ben?
Great to be back, guys. Really looking forward to it. Thoroughly enjoyed the first two podcasts. So, yeah, looking forward to smashing this third out of the park.
Absolutely. And with us as well was Jake Gallagher. He pulls all the strings at Who Scored. How you doing, Jake?
Yeah, good, thank you. Like Ben, looking forward to this one. I think that last night, as you shocked me with the Stephen Berghouse question, and I was completely swiped him aside. I'm prepared tonight.
Have you got stats on Stephen Berghouse then?
I do. A couple of good ones.
I'm looking forward to that then. So before we get into that, let me just explain what FanTeam Daily is and what the show is about. So FanTeam, as I mentioned, have a Euro 2020 fantasy football game. And as I said, there's a guaranteed prize pool of £1 million. £1 million is £20 to enter. And you can enter with multiple teams, which is great if you want to go with a few different strategies, which is what I've done and gone all Italy at the back in one of my teams, which is quite exciting. The game is similar to FPL. There's not much to explain in terms of the rules. You probably play FPL. You probably know how that all works. There's a couple of little differences, but we'll explain those kind of as we go. Jake, do you want to explain what's coming up until the start of the tournament?
Sure. So, FanTeam Daily is a 5-part series over 10 days. We began this series on Wednesday. We'll have a new episode dropping every other day on YouTube, right up until the start of the tournament. In each episode, there's a different theme or a topic, and today's topic is the bargain bucket. So basically players that us three are going to identify as underpriced by FanTeam, and therefore we can glean some value from them. And later on the show, we'll give away some free entries to FanTeam too. We'll do a trivia question, so keep your eyes and ears peeled later.
Perfect. Well, shall we get on with the show? You mentioned bargain bucket. I'm trying not to think of chicken. Instead, we're going to think about cheap players in FanTeam. I mean, when you said we were doing this one, I mean, there's so many, isn't there? There's so many value players, I think, in FanTeam. We've only got 15 slots. Sometimes I'm looking at the bargain players and thinking they're actually better picks than some of the premium players. So I'm really interested to know who you've both picked out on this. I'm sure we'll overlap on some of them. There'll probably be some ones that I think considered as well. So we're going to go group by group. We'll start with Group A, does that make sense? Turkey, Italy, Wales and Switzerland. Ben, you can kick us off. Any cheap players? Any gems?
Looking at the group, I'm not thinking it's going to be particularly laden with goals. So I focused my attention on those defensive assets that I think may profit during that first phase. And I went to Switzerland. Ricardo Rodriguez, the veteran defender, the Swiss defender there. And there's a couple of reasons as to why. 5 million. So he's cheap as chips. He's a great enabler across the board. But we're talking about a defender who loves a pot shot. I think he had something like 58% shot accuracy and around 2.73 shots per 90. And that fits in with the great with the new FanTeam scoring matrix. So, even if the Swiss, who are inherently, a fairly tight defensive unit, even if they don't keep a clean sheet, there's a possibility that he's going to get bonus points through the shot. But in addition to that, he's also on penalties as well. So at 5 million, I thought Ricardo Rodriguez was definitely worth a shout.
Penalties, yes, defender on penalties. We love to see
the 3 words I like to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as well, I think about all the groups, this is the tightest group. This is the one that I'm finding it hardest to predict. I think Italy are obviously the favourites, but I can see Turkey causing some surprises if Wales click and Bale's on form, and then you've got Switzerland as well. So I think the defensive picks could be really strong in this. Jake, who have you got for me?
Listen, I'm going to go for Gareth Bale first. Obvious, Captain Obvious, of course. But of the players that started 10 Premier League games last season, Bale averaged a goal or an assist more frequently than any other player, and that's every 72 minutes. So essentially, when he's on the pitch, he will return you points, and that's the thing you can trust, I think, about Bale and Wales. He will play for Wales, whereas Spurs' minutes were managed. I think, how the phrase goes, golf, Wales, Madrid, and I do believe in that. I think that he does favour playing for Wales over his club teams, and I think Gareth Bale at 6 million, epitome of a bargain.
Yeah, I really like it. Really like it. I mean, he's in one of my two teams. Actually, my less kind of punty team, just because I think he's just such a strong option. We know what we can do for Wales. I mean, there's some people that say he might be playing as a kind of like second striker as well. Depends on where he plays as well. I think they're just going to be looking to get the ball to him as much as possible. So 6 million, I was amazed by that at that price. I mean, the player that I picked out, I honestly, when I saw his price, I gasped, because I can't believe that Yilmaz, the Turkish striker, is 4.5. That to me is crazy. Like 28 appearances, 16 goals, 5 assists. He's central to absolutely everything Turkey do. He's getting on a bit. Don't get me wrong. I think he's 35 or 36 years old. Old for a footballer, I might add, not so old for the rest of us. But I just think that to me is just so cheap. I mean, I know it's a precious forward spot and all of that, but if I'm looking at a player who I think will outscore their price tag by the most, I would actually back Yilmaz. What do you make of him, Ben?
Look, I think we've spoke about Turkey and the possibilities of being everybody's dark horse, and at that price, I mean, look, that opens up possibilities for you to spend money, elsewhere. We've talked about the price, with the Harry Kanes and the Lukakus, the Mbappes of this world. You're putting somebody like that in, who gives you a chance and also enables you to sort of be really creative and frees up a hell of a lot of budget in that team. So, yeah, look, I really like it. I like Turkey. I think when it comes to those competitive games, I think, the manager knows exactly what he's doing. He's a bit of a master tactician. He's the Turkish Pep. Or is Pep, and yeah, so there's a lot to like at that price.
I mean, he's the same price as the goalkeeper, Kakir, who I also think is a good pick. But I mean, when was the last time that a starting striker was 4.5? I mean, I think about FPL, I think of someone like Ryan Brewster. And, he was that kind of bargain price, but there's no way he's going to get the returns that Yilmaz will. I mean, so yeah, I think he's very strong.
I look at that Turkish team and I'm just, there's a part of me thinking, the FanTeam know something that we don't? And is this one big, we're being hoodwinked here? Because when you look at that, that lineup and what they've produced during the qualifying period, you can pick out a handful of those Turkish players and think, yeah, they're coming in my team because they bring a lot to the party. They offer a lot of value. Again, I looked defensively. I looked at Zeki Selic from Lille. Attacking fullback, comes in at 4 million, cheap as chips, 3 goals, 2 assists. The only concern would be for me is if you doubled up on that Turkish defence with Kagia, maybe in goal, and you receive maybe that loss for stacking in defence. So that would be my only concern. But I'm definitely focused on some of those Turkish players.
No, I agree on Yilmaz 4.5. That price feels like a mistake. Feels like an error in the game. And sometimes these fantasy games offer you a gem and it would be criminal not to take it. And I think Yilmaz is that gem at 4.5 for me. Agreed.
I think it's really clever though, because you could see that he's so cheap and get him in just for that price, and then ignore a heavy front line of like Lukaku, Kane, and like Lewandowski or Ronaldo or someone like that, and then end up with Yilmaz getting like 1 goal. And the other premium options going crazy, and you're thinking, well, yeah, he was cheap, but he was playing for Turkey, and we didn't expect them to score many goals. So it's a kind of inviting price for him, but I do worry a bit that he's a bit of a trap. Jake, any other options, budget defenders or midfielders in Group A?
I've got an option in midfield, and it's for Italy, and it's only because we mentioned him yesterday, Lorenzo Insigne. It's only because FanTeam favours players who take a lot of shots. They did a bit of digging today. There's only one player who's had more shots than him in Europe's top 5 leagues this season. Insigne's had 144 shots. Can either of you guess who the only player to have more shots than Insigne? He's the greediest footballer on the planet.
Ronaldo.
Cristiano Ronaldo, exactly, yeah. So I think Lorenzo Insigne is that type of player that could just be popping off for points just by shooting from 30 yards every 5 or 6 minutes. So he is only 8 million. And if you are going to go down the route of an Italian midfielder, I think he's your one. Maybe not the definition of a bargain, but definitely lots of shots in his locker.
And you've got to remember you get points for those shots. So
exactly.
Yeah, Ronaldo, Insigne, Depay, all players that I'm looking at.
What do points make? Prizes, people. Prizes.
250 grand, hopefully.
Pounds in this game. Just while we're talking about the most shots in Europe's top 5 leagues, and go down the list. So Ronaldo's top: Insigne, Kane, Lewandowski, Benzema, Bruno Fernandes, who we've previously poo-pooed on here, Ciro Immobile, Andre Silva, Berardi, and the Memphis Depay. So those are your most shots-happy players in Europe's top 5 leagues last season.
Great, thanks, Jake. So moving on to Group B, we've got Denmark, we've got Finland, we've got Belgium, and we've got Russia. So I'm going to chuck a name at you straight away, who is in all of my fantasy teams, because I think he's a wonderful player and I think he's an absolute bargain at 7 million, and that is Christian Eriksen for Denmark. What do you think, Ben? You're nodding.
Yeah, I think he's pivotal for Denmark. If Denmark hope to progress out of that group stage, then it solely relies on the form and the performances of Eriksen. Again, he's a player who I think he has a lot to prove. Domestically, his club form hasn't been great. His time in Italy hasn't been fantastic. So, he may want to be proving a few of those doubters wrong. He may be hankering for a switch, showing that he's still got it. And yeah, look, a player that plays on the big stage, he's held in very high regard, very high esteem, for his national team. So he's going to be up front and centre, and he's going to be leading the charge for Denmark. And again, like you touched upon, it's 7 million. Then he's hard to look past.
Talisman theory, as Jake mentioned in the first episode of these. To me, it's between Denmark and Russia for that second place. I think Belgium are just going to absolutely walk away with this group, as we kind of mentioned. I like Russia, and they've got Juba up front at 5.5, which I think is a great price for him. He's an absolute beast of a man. He's going to cause that group all kinds of problems. I think he's tall, he's powerful, he's going to bring other players into the game, he's going to be strong at set pieces. So I really like the look of him. And the other player I like is Pukki at 5 million for Finland, just because he's had a great season again for Norwich. He's involved in over 50% of Finland's goals in general, which is crazy. There's lots of these kind of cheap budget forwards in FanTeam that are tempting, but I still want to go for the free premiums. Jake, anyone like that mentioned there, or do you like those picks that I've put it out? Yeah,
I was nodding at Pukki. Again, the only issue, only 3 forward slots, and Finland do have a tough group. If you did want to go down the Pukki route, you could look at, he did score 26 goals last season in the Championship, and a nice stat I found today is that he scored more league goals than any other player in the top 2 tiers of English football over the last 3 seasons, and that includes that season that he came up from the Premier League into the Premier League and did so well for Norwich. I think he was in a lot of our fantasy teams, and then he sort of went down in folklore. So maybe Pukki is an option. 5 million is a great price. The only other person I have got, and you're going to laugh at this because of the price, but he's not the cheapest bargain, but I do think there's real value in Romelu Lukaku at 11.5. If you compare him to Kane and Mbappe, I would suggest that Kane and Lukaku are the best 2 options on this game. And actually, Kane's 2 million more expensive than Lukaku. If you only had a slot for one of those 2, because that's the makeup of your team, go for Lukaku, spend the 2 million elsewhere. That's not me advocating not to go for Kane, by the way, but I do like Lukaku's price 11.5. I think he can easily be in a price 13.
It's great. It's great for the the description there, Jake. Best budget assets. Romelu Lukaku, one of the 3rd most expensive player in the game. Love it. Excellent. I do agree. I think
he's underpriced.
He is. I think he is, and I just think everyone needs him. We keep banging on about him every episode, but I really do think everyone needs him. Ben, any more, or should we move on to the team?
I would exercise just a word of caution with regards to Timo Pukki, carrying an injury as it currently stands, ankle ligament problem that caused him to miss, I think it was a game or 2 for Norwich. So he's still not 100%. Fairly confident he will make the tournament, but even if he does go into that first game, he isn't going to have a lot of minutes under his belt. It could potentially be maybe 4 to 6 weeks since he last played a competitive game. So, and when we're talking about coming into this competitive environment, you really need to be in tip-top condition. The concern would be they're already up against it, Finland. The only other player that I sort of highlighted, and again, it's a defender, so I apologise for that. And I apologise in advance for any names that I may butcher on this podcast, but I did Google this one to check, and it's Joachim Mæhle. The Danish defender doesn't have many starts to his name within the senior squad. I think it's just 6 starts, but he has scored in 2 goals in those 6 starts. Although they had a ropey sort of qualifying campaign, since the beginning of last year, Denmark have played 12 matches and they've kept 9 clean sheets. So, they're a little bit Scrooge-like at the back, and potentially, again, we're coming in at 4.5 million. So there's not a lot of money to spend on him. And he's just one that I highlighted as a potential option, again, if you want to be a little bit more creative in those attacking areas.
Really nice. I like it a lot. Okay, so moving on to Group C, we've got the Netherlands, we've got the Ukraine, we've got Austria, and we've got the lowest ranked team in the Euro 2020, which is North Macedonia. Yeah, it's a really interesting group here. Obviously got the Netherlands, who everyone's expecting to do quite well, but were pretty poor against Scotland and were lucky to get a draw, I think, in the end. Depay, I'll just chuck Depay's name straight in there at the moment. I think midfielder 8.5. Jake, you mentioned the shots that he takes. I think he's an absolute bargain. Jake, do you want to give us some other options? Maybe from the Ukraine?
Sure. I like this guy.
I do.
Just because I can say his name, isn't it?
Yeah.
Ruslan Malinovsky, 5.5 million. Nice stat that he made more key passes per 90 minutes than any other player in the Serie A last season. That resulted in him in 12 assists, which is the first on that list. And this is not, this is in the Serie A. This is not the Farmers League. They've got players like Hakan Çalhanoğlu, Rodrigo de Paul, who's creative player, who's probably going to go to Leeds this summer. Pellegrini is a player I really like at Roma. These are top players that he's beaten to this more creative than. Zielinski at Napoli, it's full of creative players, and Malinovsky's a lot cheaper than them all on this game, 5.5. And again, we keep saying the word enabler. It just allows you to spend some money elsewhere. Certainly, he's in many of my drafts.
I also like Saigankov at 5. He's actually been in better form for the Ukraine since the Euro qualifying matches. So the Ukraine have actually been really, really poor. They had a really good Euro qualifying campaign, and since then their form has absolutely tanked. And Saigankov, when they have actually been doing well, he's been the one kind of scoring and he's been doing better than Malinovsky, who I don't think has got any goal involvements in this year or last year for the Ukraine that I could see. Well, definitely no goals. Maybe he's got an assist or two. So Saigankov's 5, so he's another one. If you want to eke out even more budget, then he's one that maybe to consider. Ben, coming over to you. Who have you got for me?
Oh, I've got to touch on the Macedonian Messi, Elgif Elmas, Napoli midfielder. Only 3 starts for Napoli last year, but 30 appearances. So, not great data to go on domestically, but in terms of how he's played for North Macedonia, we've got 2 goals in 3 World Cup qualifying games, which includes a goal against Germany when North Macedonia won 2-1 there recently. And also he got 4 in 10 in European qualification ties as well. And at 5 million, again, if you want to dip down at that market, then you're looking at a player who's going to be starting, and he does have a little bit of form and a little, he's got stats there to back him up. And the second player that I'm looking at would be from Austria is Sasa Kaladelich. I hope I've got that right.
Sounds good to me.
And he's a striker who's really lit up the Bundesliga this year at Stuttgart. 16 goals, 5 assists. I think that puts him in the top 5% of across Europe's 5 big leagues, attracting interest from the Premier League with Tottenham and West Ham. Got 3 in 3 World Cup qualifying games, so recent form is good. And he's another one that I've earmarked. Just a young lad, 23 years of age, so could really come onto the scene and surprise a few people.
Really nice. Really nice. So I've got 2 other names, 2 defenders. You talked about North Macedonia. I've got Alioski in there, 4.5 on pens. Going to be absolutely crucial for them if they do manage to get out of that group, which I think everyone thinks is fairly unlikely, but they beat Germany, so anything's possible. And I've got Alaba as well at 5 for Austria, because he doesn't really play as a defender. He's classified as a defender on FanTeam, but plays kind of everywhere on the wing and plays much further up the pitch. He's not very good in that position. He tends to not do very well for Austria when he doesn't play in defence, but he's still an out-of-position player who could be a factor. Jake, lucky for those 2? Even them in your team? Alaba, I mean, he's got potentially the easiest game of the whole tournament in game week 1 against North Macedonia. You tempted?
Not tempted, I have to say. I like Alaba as a player. For Bayern, I really like him. He doesn't find a slot in my team. If you're looking for bargains in this group, now you mentioned Steven Berghouse to me yesterday, and I side skirted your question and threw you Gini Wijnaldum
This is your time.
And I thought I did Berghouse some injustice there. So I went away and did some research, and actually it appears that this guy is a bargain at 6.5. He's cheaper than Wijnaldum, he's going to be cheaper than Depay. He's actually registered double figures for goals and assists in 3 of his last 4 campaigns for Feyenoord. That just screams consistency to me. That's for goals and assists as well. Like, he had a direct hand in 106 goals in his last 119 appearances. So it's Mr. Consistent, really, and does it at international level too. So he had a direct hand in 5 goals in his last 6 competitive games for the Netherlands. So I do think me side-skirting the question yesterday and sending Eugenie Wijnaldum's way might have been a bit too hasty. And now all of a sudden he is coming into my thinking.
You've got to go with him now. It's fate. It's fate that happened. I put you on the spot.
Captain.
You looked him up. Yeah, Berghouse. It's got to be. It's Ben with Hazard captain. You with Berghouse captain. Jobs are good. And right, let's move on to Group D then. So Group D, obviously, loads of interest here, particularly with the 3 of us all rooting for England. Should be relatively routine, but who knows with England. We've also got Croatia in there, we've got Scotland, and we've got the Czech Republic. Let's come to you, Ben. Any bargains here? I struggled a bit with this group to find some real bargain gems, but let's hear if you've managed to pick any out.
Yeah, and I did. I echo those thoughts as well. I struggled, and I'm not bringing anything, drastically new to the party. It was Thomas Souček was the standout for me at 5 million, as opposed to his role at West Ham, which is slightly deeper, particularly, as Jake mentioned yesterday, following the introduction of Jess Lingard. He plays this more attacking option role. His heat map suggests he's in that opponent's box a hell of a lot more than he is when he's playing for West Ham. But just under 3 shots per game, 2.9, but looks to at least create at least one big chance and has a couple of key passes in the game for me. Such a threat on set pieces, and when I think about that Czech team, I think that's going to be a massive part of their game. Just his size, just his sheer his willingness and determination to win that ball in the opposition box. It makes him a real threat, and for me, like I say, he's one of the many, but that at 5 million, it seems like a great shout and a bargain.
I like him.
Agreed. Oh, just on Souček, I'm his number 1 fan. 2 players scored hat-tricks on international duty back in March. One was Souček, the other was Yilmaz. You can pick the pair of them up for 9.5 million combined. Yilmaz did do it against the Dutch, which is actually pretty impressive. Souček's was against Estonia, less impressive, and you clearly don't get points for this, but it was actually a perfect hat-trick for Souček. It was a header in the first half, and it was a right-footed strike from 25 yards and then a left-foot tap-in. So he's got it all. And again, 5 million, it really allows you to go enablers elsewhere. It allows you to go big up front. Thomas Souček for 5, he's in my side.
You've got the moral victory, I think, if you own a player who gets a perfect hat-trick. So, no one can take that away from you. I can better your 5 million for Souček. You think that's a bargain? I can go one better than that. John McGinn is 4.5 in FanTeam. He's got to be the best 4.5 mid in the game, surely. Any arguments?
Scotland,
I know, but if you're just looking for a 4.5 mid to sit on your bench, who might come on if you have an injury or something like that, I think he's crazily underpriced.
I do agree, actually. I think for a first or second slot on the bench, he is a good option. He actually finds it easier to score for Scotland than he does Aston Villa. He's got 10 and 32 for Scotland compared to 13 and 111 for Villa. Just something, obviously, in a slightly different role, do it further forward, and no Jack Grealish. Jack Grealish isn't Scottish, so therefore the weight of the burden to be creative and shoot doesn't fall on him so much for Villa. I do agree, 4.5, he could be an option for me, second bench.
I think we've got to remember as well that Scotland can't defend. They conceded the most goals in qualifying. They played the Netherlands last night, and they don't win by having a really tight, compact system that frustrates players. They just know how to attack, really. So the likes of McGinn and Robertson to an extent as well, if he's playing at kind of wing back, the chance of them getting attacking returns isn't so crazy. The chance of them keeping a clean sheet is, but I do think they could score some goals in this tournament. And I think McGinn is a good price at 4.5. I wouldn't start him, don't get me wrong, but I think for your bench, he's a solid pick.
Agreed. I do have one more in this group, And he was actually in the WhoScored top-rated 15 yesterday, and it's Borna Barisic, the Rangers defender. So no defender played a direct hand in more goals in European competition last season. 6 goals he was involved in. So he's clearly an attacking left back with a real attacking intent. I think, again, a bit like John McGinn, not for your first 11, but for first or second slot on the bench, 4.5, nice and cheap. He's an option. And
what I would just add to that, good news for anybody that's considering him. He has been struggling with a little bit of an adductor problem, a groin issue that caused him to miss Rangers' last 2 games, but he came through the last friendly, non-competitive game, 90 minutes without any problems. So that's a thumbs up on that front.
If he does well, WhoScored are going to be absolutely loving it.
We're raking it in.
So Group E. So I've got quite a few here. Spain, Sweden, Poland, Slovakia. I won't read out all of my names, but I've got about 6-7 potential Bargains here. Jake, I'll come straight back to you. I like the look of this group for some budget neighbours. What do you reckon?
Again, yeah, I've got 2 Polish guys down who I really like. I mentioned Peter Zielinski earlier, of creative player for Napoli. It's only 5 million.
It's one.
We've talked a lot about on previous podcasts about Robert Lewandowski, about he's going to score goals in this tournament. Well, someone's got to put it on the plate for Robert Lewandowski. Absolutely. Zielinski's that man. He was 3rd for most assists in Serie A last season. He had 10 assists and a good option at 5. Again, he could be that 4th midfielder for you.
Yep. And who's your other one?
The other one was Michał Helik. So he actually plays for Barnes.
You've stolen both of my Polish.
That's a good thing, right? Michał Helik plays for Barnsley in the Championship, scored 5 goals last season from centre-half. He's everything a centre-half should be. I think he really likes defending, like a brick wall type of defender. Big bloke, physical presence, 4.5, again, really attractive price.
Yep. Well, obviously, I'm a big fan of both of those. They're 2 I picked out. Ben, come on, give me a name that I haven't got on my list.
Well, I hope I can give you the right pronunciation of this name. It's Dejan Kulusevski.
Oh, I do not have him. Looking forward to this.
Now, this is a little bit of a punt. Swedish international, but doesn't have many minutes under his belt, so he's not necessarily nailed. But what we do know domestically, he's been playing for Juventus, and they haven't had a great season, but he's got 35 appearances, which includes 19 starts, and he could be 21-year-old. He could be a guy for the big stage. Scored and assisted in the recent Coppa Italian final win. So, maybe in the absence of Zlatan Ibrahimovic, who we, of course, is ruled out through injury, then maybe it's time for somebody like Kulusevski to step up and come to the fore and, put himself into Swedish folklore.
He's at Juventus, right?
He is.
Yeah. He looks good, actually. I really, there's some players that I'm just really quite excited to watch, like in the tournament, and he's one of them. He's a great dribbler, really, really direct, really good on the ball. So yeah, he's gonna be really interesting. All right, I've got a couple. So I mentioned John McGinn being the best 4.5 million midfielder. I think there's actually a player that can rival him. Did you know that Hamsik of Slovakia is 4.5 as well? So you talk about players who are kind of central to everything that the team does. No one's expecting Slovakia to do particularly well in this group, just like Scotland is the same. But Hamsik is Slovakia. He's the top scorer, most appearances. He's a bit like Christian Eriksen in a way, in that everything's going to kind of go through him. So I think between him and John McGinn, I think a lot of people are going to go for one of those two. Any complaints? I think you could start him.
He's got a tendency to have a screamer from 30 yards as well, and I like Hamsik as a player. I think he's on his latter years now, and that's for sure, and that's probably why he's 4.5. But he's still Marek Hamsik, he's still exciting.
He plays in Sweden now. He was at Napoli for ages, and then moved to Sweden. Ben, Hamsik?
Yeah, look, I think he's got the pedigree there, and I think on these big stage, big players for the country. It's time to stand up and be counted. It's his swan song. We've talked about his age, so maybe this is his last opportunity to prove himself on the biggest stage. There's a lot of he's come to the twilight years of his career, but undoubtedly, he's been quality, and this could be his last hurrah. He might want to go out in a blaze of glory, so I wouldn't be surprised if he come out and put some really sort of stellar performances out there. And there's always one team, there's always one player that surprises in a tournament, so why not?
The other Slovakian player to consider might be Skriniar, if that's how you pronounce it. He is basically Slovakia's best player, 26-year-old defender, being coveted, I think, by quite a lot of top clubs. Could be the tournament where he tries to really get a move. I think Man City were after him, for example. Maybe if they lose Laporte, they might bring him in, something like that. He's 4.5 on this. Again, Slovakia are probably not a team that you really want to target, but if you're looking for players for your bench, I think at 4.5, he could be a shout. I've got two other players I want to mention. I'm just going to mention Isak of Sweden, because he's 5.5 playing up front. He is carrying a lot of the hopes of Sweden on his shoulders. His domestic form is incredible. His international form is not so good, but he's only 21. I think he could be one of the guys that goes to that next level in this tournament. Not sure I'd consider him for my fan team at 5.5, but he is one that I'm definitely watching. Either of you considering him? Probably not, I'm guessing.
He's certainly not a player that registered on my radar. But we see a common theme here with the Swedish squad. There's a couple of young and upcoming decent prospects who are doing well domestically. Maybe this tournament just comes slightly too soon for them, and it's maybe further down the line that these players will, as long as that talent progresses, maybe want to watch in the future.
17 goals in 34 appearances for La Liga for Real Sociedad, Isak. And the other player I just want to mention is Moreno at 8 for Spain. We did mention him in the last episode. Ben wasn't a fan. I think you prefer Jota. I think you were saying at kind of the same price. I keep coming back to him though and thinking, okay, that first game might be a bit of a risk because we don't really know who's going to start up front. But if he does get the kind of nod, I think he could be one of the stars of the tournament at 8, because he's class. Scored the goal in the Europa League final. He's had a really, really good season for Villarreal. He's really highly rated in Spain, and Spain, are a good side, as we know. Jake, Moreno?
Yeah, I mentioned yesterday, he's going to be in WhoScored's top rated 15. Clearly a good player. One of those forward options, so he's probably not going to be in either of my teams. But I could see him scoring a few in that group, and all of a sudden 8 million it turns out to be a bargain.
My prediction is that Spain do fairly well in the group, get through, and he becomes a factor in our teams later on in the tournament. When we know that he's settled and he's playing well, maybe he's got a couple of goals, and I bet you later on in the tournament we're all considering getting Moreno into our team. That's my prediction. We'll see if that comes true. Right, is there any more differentials in this group, Ben?
Not for me. I think I've exhausted all options.
Oh, Jake raising his hand, very polite. Yes, you've got.
I do have one, yeah, and everybody needs a backup goalkeeper in this game. Martin Dubravka of Slovakia, the Newcastle fame. He's probably the best backup option. Only 4 million, so he's the cheapest goalkeeper you can possibly buy.
Is he 4 million?
He's 4 million. He'll play the 4. He'll play the 3 games, and he quite possibly make a lot of saves. Yeah. So if you're unfortunate enough to have your first goalkeeper get an injury, and he comes in, you might have a good option there with someone who makes some good saves.
That's a great spot. He's locked in my team. I missed that one. I didn't see Dubravka at 4. He's going straight in my team once this is done. Easy. Right, so moving on to the final group, the group of death, Group F, Hungary, Portugal, France, Germany. Oh my God, I can't wait to see some of the games in this group. I really struggled again to pick out any differentials here. I've got one. I'm just going to mention it straight away. Havertz at 8. I'm not sure if he really is this kind of budget player, but he's hitting form for Chelsea at the right time. He was absolutely class in the Champions League final. He does well internationally for Germany anyway. He's someone that I might consider later on in the tournament, maybe not in the group stages because of how difficult it is, but I thought I'd get him out of the way. He's my one. Jake, who have you got for me?
I've only got one as well, actually, and Ben, you made a case for him yesterday, and I was sold. Diogo Jota, and it's not a bargain per se, £8 million. But if you couldn't afford Ronaldo, or you just don't like the guy like me, then Diogo Jota for 8 million is a good shout. I think he actually averages a goal every other game for Portugal. He's got 6 goals in his 12 caps. So clearly got pedigree at this level, and he knows where the goal is, as we've seen for Liverpool.
Aren't you a Man U fan?
I am a Man United fan, yeah.
And you don't like Cristiano Ronaldo?
Correct.
Dear, wow. You must be the only United fan who doesn't like Ronaldo. Ben, let's not talk about Ronaldo. Hit me with a bargain.
There's one for me as well, and again I'm sticking with Portugal, and I went with Bernardo People will be drawn to Bruno, but you look back over the last 15 competitive games, I think it's 4 goals and 8 assists for Bernardo, compared to Bruno. I think there's just 1 attack and return in his last 14 competitive for Portugal. And we're talking about a Manchester City midfielder who, in terms of his expected assists, his non-penalty XG, his progressive carries, his touches in the opposition box, we're talking about mid to high percentile across Europe's top 5 leagues. I think he's rated at 99 for his touches in the opponent's area. And at 8 million, like I say, comes in 1 million less than Bruno. And for me, I just think, if you're going to go down that route, then he is head and shoulders above the likes of Fernandes. And I would prefer, if I'm going to fill up those Portuguese slots in my team, I would I'd prefer to have him in midfield and go strong and attack without Ronaldo as well.
It's very difficult to do a video on budget players when 3 of the teams in the group are Portugal, France and Germany, and the other team is Hungary, who are all expecting to get thrashed in every match. So the fact we've all come up with 8 million players, I think sums that up. Okay, so let's move on to the competition. So Jake mentioned earlier that we're giving away free entries to the FanTeam game, and we'll be running a competition every show. So for this giveaway, you just have to answer this trivia question correctly and write your answer in the comments section. We'll select 1 right answer at random and give you your free entry. Jake, what's the trivia question this episode?
Right, so a little bit harder than yesterday, I hope.
It's hard yesterday as well.
It was difficult. Today's question is, who was the top-rated European player on Who Scored last season who is not going to Euro 2020? So he's not going to the Euros this summer. The clue is he had a Who Scored rating of 7.63. I don't know how good a clue that is. But again, much harder this time. I can see you both are puzzled, and that's good. And if our viewers know, please put it in the comments.
I'm trying to think of which quite big nations didn't qualify, but they're pretty much all there. Or what standout player? Because 7.63 is a good rating, right?
Yeah, no, he's a top player, this guy.
You didn't specify why he's not going. Is it injury? Is that something, or did they not qualify? Is it a...
Oh, he's not telling us. He's gone all blank on us.
Maybe.
If our viewers, if they know the right answer, put it in the comment section. We'll choose 1 at random, and then we'll just get your FanTeam account accredited with a free entry to this game.
Will you tell me after the show, Jake?
I will.
Thank you. So we're going to finish this episode like we do all the episodes, just with a golden rule for picking your FanTeam squad. So it was very philosophical yesterday. I wasn't prepared for that. I haven't come on with a philosophical answer this time either, so I'm hoping we don't go down that route again. Ben, let's come to you first. What have you got?
So tonight, my golden rule. Look, we're in the midst of the the build up to the Euro tournament. There's a lot of non-competitive games going on. What I would say is, don't be necessarily swayed by results of teams at this point. Managers will know the nucleus of that starting 11 come tournament time. Players will know to a certain degree, and there are going to be elements of players, not, I suppose, managing their games in ahead of that sort of first competitive fixture. They'll not want to get injured. They'll not want to get sent off. So they will be holding back. So don't be thrown, by the odd quirky result that's been put your way. If you do your due dill, base your decisions on what's happened over a period of time, not just these one-off fixtures, on there as we build up to the big tournament.
Excellent stuff. Jake, what have you got for me?
Yeah, so a bit of a strange golden rule from me, but my golden rule is don't listen to me. My golden rule is listen to the people who have actually won this game. So tune in next time. We're going to interview Josh Waldridge. So he won FanTeam's season-long Premier League game last season. He took away £180,000. We're going to interview him. He's going to give us his top tips on how to actually win this game. And he's also going to give us a team reveal. So he's going to show us his top 15 players, which is invaluable insight, I think. So yeah, golden rule: don't listen to me.
Listen to Josh. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. We'll be chatting to him on the next episode. My golden rule is pretty boring. Seems to be a bit of a theme of mine. I just think that the 2 games to target are those first 2 games. I'm expecting the third game of the groups to be quite tight for a lot of teams. So I think you want to be really going for it in these first 2 games and not expecting too much in your third game. So I think those first 2 games of the group are probably going to decide how you do in this fantasy game. So go hard on the first 2 weeks. Make sure your teams are really well set up for those first 2 weeks. That's my advice. Cool. So thanks everyone for listening to FanTeam Daily by Who Scored. Make sure you like and subscribe to our YouTube channel and this video as well. Give it a like. Our next show drops on Tuesday, and we're going to look at game strategy, transfers, and like Jake said, we'll be joined by the winner of FanTeam's Premier League game, Josh Waldridge. So amazing stuff. Can't wait to talk to him. He won £180,000 last season. Going to be a great show. And I'll see you then. Thank you, Ben. And thank you, Jake. You're watching FanTeam Daily, a podcast by WhoScored.com.